Manling coins are like their words. Never trust them. Use your weighing scales and keep your axe handy.
Thank you for that brief lesson on the evils of capitalism. We are back for another episode of Close Order. Just for anyone at home, Lewis never tells me what he's going to say.
You have to react on the fly, and then you
yeah, which I think is way more fun.
I'm always talking about communism or capitalism and all of these.
That does come up a lot, doesn't it? It's almost like that is ever present in not only our world but Games Workshop products. Who'd have thought that Games Workshop would understand the evils of capitalism? So we have got a great episode where we're going to talk about the first Saffron Fantasy Slam, which is very exciting. The first event that Lewis has run for the Old World. I am absolutely heartbroken I couldn't be there. I was at a lovely wedding in, I was going to say Cardiff, Chepstow. Congratulations to Matt and Carly. It was amazing. On balance, I would have rather been there, but I would have liked to have been able to do both. So, it's what it is.
No judgment here.
I don't go to that many weddings, so it was nice to get out and see the guys. Before we get into the episode, though, you may have seen a video went up yesterday, the celebrating 1,000 subscribers and the future of the channel. Obviously, the channel is rebranded. It's now called Close Order, same as the podcast. I'm sure in no way, shape, or form is that going to get confusing. It'll be completely fine. But it's a good name. Lewis came up with the name, so good job there. It's funny. I'll be like, I've got this idea, but I don't know what to call it. And then Lewis comes back half an hour later with a full notes screenshot, just like, here are some names I came up with. That one's good. I like that one. So
we're slowly ticking things off the list for all of our show types.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm making sure I'm taking 75% royalties, obviously, Ed. So
perfect. Yeah,
and check in the post.
That is after. So I'm doing Hollywood accounting. So this is it's not net. It's not gross. It's net. So it's after all expensive. So right now, I think what I need to do is charge you 75% of the expenses that I have incurred, including these lovely lights that I've got up here to illuminate myself. But on that note, there is. I will link the video up probably over here. I think that's where YouTube tends to put it. But we have opened up memberships. I do talk about it in the video in more depth, but basically you can launch memberships at 500 subscribers. I didn't want to do that because I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go with the channel. I wanted to have more of a stable footing on what I was doing, basically. But they are live, and if you want to support the channel, you absolutely can. As I said in that video, there's no... If you don't want to subscribe, if you don't want to support us, that's absolutely fine, or if you don't feel like you can. Likes and comments are almost as helpful. But yeah, really appreciate the support that we've been getting so far. I will take this moment to shout out the 2 members that we've got. So this has been recorded about 3 or 4 hours after that video went up. But huge thanks to Squid Herder Scene, or Sean, sorry, and Escape Velocity as well.
He's so grateful his name has just been butchered on the podcast.
I've got Scene Bean or Sean Bourne stuck in my head because obviously I spend a fair amount of time at the TSN Arena now. It's my local club, and also I go to loads of events there. And there's the first aid kit has a picture of Sean Bean with a shirt on that says "Watch Jugs" or something along those lines. Jugs being the podcast that they do there. Anyway, went slightly off track. So I think that was all I had to cover. I tell you what we haven't done. Failed to mention that we have a Discord now for Close Order. So that Discord will be in the description down below if you want to check that one out. That is a free Discord. It's not a Patreon-only Discord. There are some VIP sections if you are either Longbeard or Grail Knight tiers. That's basically if you want to see sneak peeks of what we're working on, basically sort of content or hobby stuff. There'll also be, depending on which tier you are, potentially you can vote on which army I'm going to be playing in one of the battle reports for their next month. But I will put that link in the chat in the description box down below.
What I'd also take from those tiers as well, and Ed doesn't know this, I'm about to say this live. The Lore podcast, the Old World Chronicles, the Battle for Blackfire Pass, Ed will release at some point He's just holding it. But I'm very much up for hearing suggestions on what people want to hear about in the lore of the old world. I just love all of it, so I'm quite happy to make episodes on whatever. So I think we'll put that out to our fanatic to our Longbeard or higher.
Yeah, perfect. That'd be amazing.
Discord, you get to choose what goes in the lore videos, and I'll run with that. I'll take your suggestions, and we'll move those forwards.
Fantastic. So if you do have any suggestions, do put them in the what have we got at the moment? The Pick My Army tab. I'll probably rename that and to be sort of a vote on upcoming content or something like that. And if you are one of those higher level supporters, you can put in your suggestions. And at the end of the month, if there are multiple, we'll have a vote for anyone who is interested. Thank you for helping us hit 1,000 subscribers. Give us some money. Keep watching the videos. Leave comments and upvotes and all that sort of stuff because it helps us get seen by more people. If you want to buy Warhammer and you're in the UK, use the referral link to Element Games. I think that's all the shilling.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Well, I think it's probably worth noting on those memberships that if you join our second tier, the name of which I have forgotten, you will earn yourself...
The Longbeard tier.
The Longbeard tier, you will start to earn yourself 10% off at all Saffron Fantasy Slam events in the future. So you might find, if you come to a lot of events here in the east of England, that their membership actually pays for itself and then some. So you could be making a profit out of your YouTube memberships. So would you believe? Assuming you were already going to all of the events, don't report me to Martin Lewis or anything like that, because
I think let's be fully clear on the financials there. That would require you to go to the Old World and 40k events, I think, to make a profit on it. But I guess that is possible if you went to all of them.
Yeah.
So
and we have exciting future plans for the Fantasy Slam based on how successful the first one was. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Old World good stuff in Saffron.
I haven't asked you this, so feel free to say no. Do you want to announce the next one at the top of the show, or are we going to keep that suspense for later on?
Let's do it now. Why not? We're talking about it. This makes sense, doesn't it? Next event is 2nd of November. This obviously will be our second Fantasy Slam. It is going to be another one-day event, so we're sticking with the RTT theme just for now. I will be continuing to waive most of the painting requirements, just because from what we've seen from the first event, we have a lot of very brand new players, and clearly takes a little while to put 2,000 points together fully painted. So this will be in November, and we will waive those painting requirements. I think from next year, I am in conversations with the venue about potentially running 6 GT-sized events over the course of the year, so one every other month is the plan that's in my head. I'm also getting married next year, which is very exciting, but also includes lots of things like honeymoon and stuff like that. So I haven't necessarily run this past the better half yet, but I'm sure it'll all be fine. But yeah, probably 5 or 6 GT-size events is the plan for next year. I'm hoping to be able to announce those sometime soon once I've got the dates secured. But what I'm thinking is I will basically alternate. I'll do 1 month will be a 40k event, the next month will be a fantasy event, and then rinse and repeat. So there's a month, every single month there's an event going on. It'll just alternate between 40k and fantasy.
Oh wow, I thought you meant you were going to run 6 events overall, but you mean 6 Old World events?
6 Old World events, yes. This one has been successful. Hell yes, indeed.
You can tell that we haven't talked about this at all. That's great. So
live raw reactions from Ed about all the travelling he's now going to do to the east of England.
It is incredibly inconvenient for me to get to. Yes, that's correct. I haven't fully planned in and booked, but I'm fairly certain I'm going to be there. So if you want to play against me or even just come and say hi, I will almost 99% certainly be at the event on the 2nd of November. So,
and if that's going to put you off, I will make sure Ed doesn't run.
That's fair. Perfect. Well, enough talking about what happens in the future. Should we talk about what happened in the past?
Let's do it. Let's take back in time. We need a cart wall with all of that weird noise. Back to the weekend where we ran our first ever Saffron Fantasy Slam. Cool logo here, done by none other than Scrivo, who is doing lots of design work. Definitely, I'm sure Ed, you'll put a little link to his thing that he wants people to subscribe to more design work. He's doing some stuff for us as well on close order. So he is a good egg and would encourage anyone who likes logo getting done by Scrivo. But it was the Fantasy Slam resounding success. I think a really, really, really fantastic day. We had 22 players, dropped down to 18 players as a result of a broken down car, which contained 4 of our players.
Oh no!
On the way over, so they were stuck in the wilds of Essex somewhere with a car full of people with armies, which was a real shame because the AA originally said they'd be able to go and pick them up and then couldn't pick them up until like gone midday, which meant by the time they'd have done the repair and got over, they just wouldn't have been able to make it. So it was a real shame actually for those players because they were actually for brand new players as well who had never been to an Old World event before and had never really played the game either. So this was going to be a really perfect event for them. So hopefully they're going to come back to future ones and give it another go, and hopefully with a more reliable vehicle. And we'll see them there. But so we ended up 18 players, 3 games. And as I say, loads of, and this is what I really like to see, lots of brand new players, so a couple having their first ever games of Old World. They'd just been spending the whole time building their armies and that hadn't even played a game yet by the time they got there, but being helped by the other half of the event, which I would describe as long-bearded veterans of the Warhammer Fantasy Battles era. And seeing the newer players being helped along by the more experienced players is really the kind of the genuine atmosphere that I want to create at all of my events. We've spoke about it before, haven't we, Ed? I'm deliberately not trying to create super competitive events. That is not what Saffron Walden and Saffron Fantasy Slam is going to be about. We're about trying to create a welcoming environment and having people come along that are just there for a really good day out, and actually that people, whatever their kind of views on going to events are, whether they're nervous about attending events with lots of people, all that sort of stuff, actually you can come to a Saffron event and know you're going to be made to feel welcome and feel comfortable. So that's what we really try and go for. And I say that at the start of every event. I'll stand up in front of everybody and say, this is what I'm trying to achieve. It goes in all the event packs, it goes in all the email correspondence in advance of the event. But actually it requires the players to get on board with that, doesn't it? So I can say it, but if everyone decides to play win at all costs Warhammer and make it all about them and how amazing they are, then it just ruins the atmosphere, doesn't it? So it's a credit to all of our players for this first event, to them for doing that and actually going through the event, helping everybody out and actually making that atmosphere that people then comment and say they really enjoy. So yeah, it was a fantastic day, I'd say.
Nice, good. Well, I'm glad it went well. Obviously went really well because you're planning on doing not only 1 more this year but 6 next year.
Yeah.
So that's a winner. Yeah. So just make sure that you organise it so that when you're getting married and having a honeymoon, that's the 40k month that you. That's less important, right? So don't worry about that one.
For sure, I'll fit it around.
Perfect. Glad we can count on.
We know what the priorities are, Ed, obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's been really interesting. We spoke about it before we came on camera as well, that there was a good chunk of players that came from sort of the Cambridge, Northwest Essex part of England. And they previously hadn't necessarily made themselves known to some of the local clubs. And that obviously they'd found out about the event somehow and had decided to come along, which is really, really great. But subsequent to that, they've joined the couple of local clubs we've got, and we've got our first kind of Old World game that doesn't involve me at the local club on Thursday this week, which is really exciting to see. Sort of people coming into the hobby, people have come to their first event and are excited to keep playing and come to clubs and meet more people and play more games. So that's the sort of thing that is only a good sign for a community and a hobby to grow like that, isn't it? Actually, people come along, enjoy it and want more, and then keep going to clubs and get involved in their local communities. And it's the sort of thing where if you're, say, a Sigmar player or a 40k player playing at the club and you start seeing all these people pushing these square-based models around, and you go, oh, what's that? And that's how you build more momentum, isn't it? You get more people involved, more people get interested and follow it about and get stuck in, which is really good.
I think you might need a spare army, bud, because the first game is free. That's how you get it. You get it, you know. Push that plastic crack. Yeah. No, I've actually got some high elves here with me, mate. If you want, I'll do a demo game with you. It's really fun. We could, knock a game out in a few hours. Yeah, you want to try? Sound. Yeah. I'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. You'll have some orcs and goblins. You say you're going to get great, perfect.
Go full Games Workshop employee and just sell.
Yeah, but you're not making
really
any money out of having them buy models. So I guess recommend whatever alternatives you fancy.
Yes. Yeah, we do have our local community 3D printer, so there are definitely models that aren't available at the moment that no one will sell you that magically appear anyway.
Yeah, there is that. Perfect. All right. Well, shall we have a chat about how the event went?
Yes, let's do it. So I guess we can start with congratulating our winner, Edward. I won't use second name, but Edward knows who he is. Not you. Get in the bin. You didn't turn up. Too busy celebrating the marriage of a young couple. But he took his Bretonians, his first ever event, and won his games 20-0, 15-5, and 18-2 to take the win for the lady. And had a cracking event, I think. Basically, just ran everyone over. Is the summary. Nice. I would see him start opposite his opponent, and then by sort of turn 1 or 2, his whole army's in combat. And then about 3 or 4, there's not much left. So that be Bretonians at the moment, I think.
It's funny because in my experiences, I haven't had much issue with Bretonians. I don't know if it's just the style of armies that I like. I like having quite wound dense models, which Bretonians struggle with because they don't have the volume of attacks. And I also like having a good shooting presence. So maybe that's something that Bretonians struggle with.
Yeah, if you can take that first charge and not crumble from it. I did see, I think in his first game, or it might have been his second game, he basically just hit the opponent's army and then it all just ran away. So if you, as you say, if you're wound dense enough and you're not necessarily rely on some of the rank bonuses and other kind of combat res bonuses to win.
First charge is a hell of a drug, I got to say.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I can see that Bretonian force just hitting my skeleton warriors and just cleaving through 15 of them quite happily just through combat res because I've lost all of my ability to kind of add those points back, even though I'm not doing any wounds. So, I think it's a very strong army. But as you say, I think there's probably, if he hits maybe ogres or he hits your trolls and then he bounces off that first combat, what then happens after that? What's the follow-up? Is there a follow-up? And if there isn't, do you just kind of crumble away?
Yeah.
So he did really, really well. Fantastic player, lovely bloke as well. Donated his prize to the person he beat in the final round as well, his Tomb Kings player, because it was a Tomb Kings prize, big Necrosphinx thing. So he donated that to his third round opponent. So credit to him for doing that, which was really, really good. And we also had another undefeated player. We had Matthew with his Orcs and Goblins. So obviously he didn't get quite as many victory points over the course of the day as Ed did. So he's come into second place, but again, did very well. And David, who came in third place, also with Orcs and Goblins, both fanatic heavy builds. So I think we went through the list in advance. I think it was like 6 and 7 fanatics or something like that. I can't remember the exact number of them, but we did see a few games with lots of fanatics kind of spinning around the board and generally getting in the way. And probably, I guess, quite a good counter for the Bretonian as well. It would have been interesting to see what happens if we play a 4th round and Ed and Matthew play each other.
I can tell you from experience, I love playing against Bretonians if I've got fanatics because they're very, very expensive squads, get hit by me, and they, take D6 wounds that are, wounding on 2s, and then they get not much of a save. It's pretty brutal.
Definitely. And I guess what we also saw, and I'm trying to say this without being disparaging to 40k players, but they're probably not listening. The hobby standard, even at an event like this one, where I said you don't have to have your armies fully painted, the hobby standard was genuinely incredible. And you've seen this as well, haven't you? You've seen this at
100%.
TSN events.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's people have old armies that they've just put a lot of time and love into and then just updated their bases and brought them into the new game, or whether it is just people that like playing Old World tend to spend loads and loads of time on their armies. But I know sometimes if I'm doing, say, a 50-player GT for 40k, I've normally nominate sort of four armies for best army that all the other players then vote on. And there've been a couple of times where I've looked across 50 armies and not struggled to find 4, but found a clear 4, and then the rest kind of definitely in kind of second place onwards. Whereas even though we only had 18 players at this one, trying to find 3 or 4 people was really hard. I think there was probably 8 or 9 armies that could well have qualified for a best army nomination.
Nice.
And had a chance to be voted on, which I think is just a standard that's so much higher.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if I hit next slide, we will see. Oh, these are just some photos from the event. Oh, I should have been talking about that. I've got all my order wrong in my slide. Right, I'm going to cycle through some photos from the event, and we'll come back to those if we've got time. I had in my mind that we're going straight onto best army, but there we are. Here is our best army, which is Rick's Dark Elves. And just looking at, say, the Cold One Riders, for example, the amount of highlighting and effort that's gone into those is genuinely amazing. And then some of his bigger monsters as well, just the blending and the graduation of colours. I don't know how well this comes out on a YouTube feed, but I can tell you from looking at the army up close, it was a well-deserved winner, I think.
Looking at the base converters that he's got there, this is obviously an army that's had more than the old world timescale to get ready. This is obviously an older army. I remember talking about this list and saying this looks more like a classic fantasy list as opposed to like what I expect to see from old world. So I think this might be models that he's had for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And Rick actually also won most sporting opponent, which at an event like the Saffron Slam, where I make everybody, through pain of death, be nice to each other, it's quite a hard award to win because everybody is trying to be nice to each other all the time. So it is credit to him for having that good an army and then also being such a fine gentleman as well. So yeah, kudos to him for that. Shout out as well to Ed, who won the event. His Bretonians were stunning. And as well, the army that I thought was my favourite was Lee Puntis. He had a Demons of Chaos army with a really, really impressive like Bloodthirster and other loads. It was all Khorne themed, so it was just Bloodthirster, Juggernaut, Soul Grinder, lots of Khorne Hounds, and then some big blocks of Bloodletters, which again was an absolutely really, really stunning army. So credit to him for that as well. But yeah.
Now, I'm taking a punt here. I don't actually know the answer, but if someone wanted to see more pictures of the event, maybe in higher definition, a little bit closer up, might there be an Instagram that they could go to find those?
There may well be, Ed. That's excellent advertising. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you basically follow me on Instagram, which is Elmo Miniatures, ELMO, as in the puppet thing, which is a nickname of mine for ages ago, but I've now got to the point where Google, if you put Elmo Miniatures in, my page comes above
Elmo the Puppet.
Stuffed toys of Elmo the Puppet. So I think I'm winning at Google SEO stuff now. But yeah, if you type Elmo Miniatures in and avoid the red monster thing, and you'll find me, and you'll find all on Instagram there, you'll find the photos from the event. Should all be on various posts across there. So do check them out. My vampires are on there as well if you like to see skeletons and direwolves being painted. They'll all be on there as well. And that as well, if you want to come to an event, again, just look for Elmo Miniatures, and the November event is up there. Tickets are available, so feel free, help yourself.
Perfect. If you want to see those links down in the description below in the link tree, there will be both the Instagram and the Elmo Miniatures website, so you'll be able to find those without having to Google around, despite Lewis's work on making sure that you can find it by Google.
Yeah, definitely say that. And also, obviously, if you have signed up as a member and you want your discounted ticket, just message me on Instagram or Facebook and I'll sort that out for you.
And as a reminder, that is Longbeard or Grail Knight tier.
Indeed it is. So shall we move on to some feedback, Ed, that I've had from the event?
Okay, so we're going to go winner, best army, feedback, and then talk about the games?
Yes.
I love it. Why not? Go wild.
Yeah, let's go for it. Because this is what I want to get across to, and getting across to a lot of the players that were there as well. First ever Old World event have run. Clearly, I've been running 40k events for 3 years now, so got an idea of like how to structure an event, how to do an intro, how to do an event pack. So that kind of thing I'm relatively confident on. But actually laying out an old world event is completely different, completely new to me. So I was really keen to take as much feedback as possible from the players that came, and try and encourage them to kind of send me as much positive and negative. Clearly, I need to know positive stuff is great, but I need to know stuff that didn't work so that for November we can be better prepped. And then once we're feeling ready to go up to GT sized events, that people can walk into a 2-day event feeling like they've got good value for money. So some absolutely key takeaways that came back from the event. Literally everybody that emailed me afterwards, and I actually got loads of, like, nearly half the people that went sent me detailed feedback on an email. So that I've never had that before, and actually getting people to spend the time to sit down and write an email. Yeah. No, to be fair, every single person started the email with how much fun they had, how much they loved it. And actually, we're in a position where we've already half sold out the November event. We've already even advertised it just from those players signing up again. So, to be honest,
just to go off that, something that you do is if you've come to an event, you do open up ticket sales to the next event to the attendees first to give people who have been a chance to get their ticket in ahead of time.
Definitely, and they get a little bit of discount as well, so they can pick up an event a ticket slightly cheaper if they want to come back. And the fact that I've already over half sold the next event, which is bigger than this one, from the people that turned up to the first event, I think is testament. So take that for as many reviews as you like, but that's what the general feedback started with. The next thing that a lot of people said was that they wanted more variety in the missions. Now I'm going to plug another podcast, Ed, for a sec, so cover your ears. But the Square-based podcast has just done a whole session on mission variety and how to kind of spice things up a little bit at events, which I've been diving into recently. It's a really good episode. Would encourage you to listen. But it's a really good point. I did
for those of you who play Old World who might not have heard of the Square-based podcast. We recommend you check it out because it is the primo source for all Old World content. I don't know how you might have, when the end times came, you might have gone to sleep under a rock and then just woken up now. I think that's the only way you wouldn't know about it. But they're pretty good. So, check them out. Sorry, please continue.
It's not as good as Close Order, obviously, but they're doing well.
I think that's a level of ego that I can't even bring myself to believe. If you have watched the video where I talk about the upcoming goals for the channel, I do say with a fairly straight face, and I do mean it seriously, that the next goal is to become the second largest Old World channel, because Rob and Val are now at like 14k subs, so it's going to be hard to catch them up in the sort of medium to short term.
Yeah.
So that'll be something for not this year, but like the year after, I think, overtaking those guys. Something along those lines. Again, not joking. So
coming for you.
Yes, anyway, they do a great episode where they talk about some interesting changes that they want to bring in, but doing it through missions and map packs.
Yeah, definitely. So I ran, because it was the first event, I did 2 open battles and 1 mountain pass mission. So I figured open battle, given that we had some players turning up for their first ever game of Old World, I think probably makes sense in the first event. Mountain pass I do quite like, it's good fun. But yeah, fundamentally would agree with that. Just put 2 different mission types in. So we'll have a play around with that for the next one, I think. And just again, it's just 3 games, so just mix it up a bit and see what we can put in.
Sorry, I need to give a live update. It is 7:14 p.m. on Tuesday, the 23rd, and after we've just plugged Val and Rob, I've just received a message from Val saying congrats. So that was perfect timing. God, they're just so nice, aren't they?
Has he bugged you? Has he got bugs in your room, Ed?
I don't think he needs to. I think everything that I say goes on the internet.
But this isn't on the internet yet, although I guess it is because we're recording.
It will be very soon.
The magic of technology.
Yes, I'd love to get ahead of myself, but right now everything's there's a reason that a lot of channels do like, here's members only content or here's content days early. There's a reason I didn't put that up as one of the rewards, because I'm recording everything the night before, because everything you see is a whirlwind. It's I'll get ahead of myself at some point, maybe.
Life is busy. But yeah, so that's something that we'll play around for next time. Not a problem at all. Everyone said that they really loved the terrain, which is really good, and that means a lot to me because it's something that anyone that's been to one of my 40k events will know that huge amount of work and effort goes into the terrain layouts. And I always had, when I was buying 40k terrain, I always had in mind that it would be good to have some of the terrain be able to cross over. So I've deliberately, for the 40k events, had always shied away from just doing like ruins and futuristic stuff, which means we've got castle structures and rock structures and things like that which do transition across. So people said that the quality of terrain was excellent, which I'm very happy with, and shout out to the guy that makes all my terrain for a company called Pumpernickel Games. Would recommend checking him out on Etsy. He makes some absolutely stunning pieces of work at very reasonable prices. Tell him I sent you as well, and you might get something special back. The criticism that people had is that actually there might be a little bit too much terrain on the boards. So there's a couple of examples on the screen now.
Those look super reasonable to me.
Well, so I kept the 24-inch bubble in the middle.
Yeah,
is open. I think just maybe the perspective slightly on the photos is slightly off, but there is a 24-inch bubble in the middle. It might be slightly offset or whatever. Other than things like low linear obstacles, so like if you look at the top photos, like a low brick wall there, which I did put within that kind of 24-inch bubble. But when we are playing on 60 by 44 mats, so we're not using 6x4s. So I think what that does if you use the same amount of terrain you'd have on a 6x4, because the maps are actually just a bit narrower, you start the same distance apart, but the maps are a bit narrower. It doesn't give you quite as many opportunities for flanking, that sort of thing. So I think once you have 4 big bits of terrain and 2 or 3 little bits of terrain, it can feel slightly tight. So I'm thinking I might drop down for the next one to just 3 big bits of terrain. So looking at the top one, for example, maybe dropping one of the woods or dropping one of the big ruins.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the walls that you end up dropping, because the recommended, the square base pack, basically, they run 6 bits of terrain on a 6x4, and that feels like a great amount of terrain. That feels really good. Is there any plans to go up to a 6x4 in the future?
So potentially, but clearly there's a financial implication to that. So if I've got to buy 25 mats at 50-60 quid a mat, we are suddenly looking in the realms of quite a few £1,000, which don't currently have a lot. Everything has been invested in terrain and mats this year,
and also going to planning a wedding and a honeymoon.
that does contribute as well. But and obviously for anyone that doesn't know, I don't have like a big storage facility or anything like that, so it's then storing what is already 30-40k mats and then adding another, so I'd have to find space to source best part of 60 mats somewhere. Which is, I have a basement which I put lots of stuff in, but I think if I added another 30 mats in there or 25 mats in there, or even just like 14 mats, 15 mats, I think it would be quite a challenge. So my initial instinct, and actually people that did say, they were like, well, we've played the game on 6x4s and now we've played it on 60 by 44s, and actually we think you can make it work on the smaller maps, and ultimately that's what Games Workshop recommend anyway. They're minimum sizes for the boards. So a lot of people are saying we're not going to suggest that, or we're not going to say we're not going to show up if you don't have 6x4s, but if you are going to stick with smaller mats, just need to give it a little bit more space, I think, to maneuver. So yeah, sure. you could take off the obstacles, the linear obstacles, but in kind of tradition to the 40k events as well, very much like the terrain to be as interactive as possible, which is definitely something that Old World does really, really well. So I'm always inclined to take things that don't necessarily interact with the armies off, rather than something like low linear obstacles, which have an interesting set of rules around them that can help change games slightly. So stuff to think about. So
yeah, maybe that's something we do for a future episode. We just sit down and write an event pack. It might be one that requires me to do a little bit more editing, instead of just being like, oh god, does that tree go there? maybe we cut out the sort of middle bit. But maybe that's something.
Oh, you mean like a terrain pack?
Yeah, like maybe that's something that we just sit down and write. I know Rob is planning on doing terrain packs. Obviously, and the TSN Arena is my local, so there is some potential that I will be doing some testing there. But yeah, cool. That'll be good. Interesting to see what you do.
I guess it's worth noting as well. If anyone appreciate that I'm in kind of England, so if you're across the pond or you're
in kind of like England, yeah,
you're not coming to an event or you're not part of it or you don't intend to come, I would welcome feedback on terrain and the rules. So again, if you go on to the Elmo Miniatures website, there's a terrain section where basically a player going into an event, turning up at a table, will have a section on the website that tells you all the different rules for the tables. So I guess that the other thing that people did like is that I was trying to play around with the garrisoning rules. I think they call it Dark Ruins or something like that. So in that top photo, and actually if I push on to the next slide slightly, the buildings and towers and structures are all structures that units can go into, rather than just being lumps of impassable terrain. They're terrain you can interact with, because I think there's a really, really interesting set of rules around buildings that seem to be quite well written and seem to work quite well. And people have commented when they've fed back that actually they really enjoyed that they were able to put archers, for example, in buildings.
Yeah, I bet they did.
Well, yes.
So interesting thing, because I have played a game where I went into a building. This was quite early in my old world career. Turns out, not protection from magic missiles. So my ogres got melted by fireballs.
Yeah, and I think the rules that they work quite well. I think those rules. I took off. So one of the Dark Ruins rules is there's like a leadership debuff for being near the building, which I just took that away because that was just far too much faff. But because they really modelled the garrisoning around like there being like really like creepy old style ruins that might be haunted and that sort of stuff. So was
this one of the narrative missions in the book that it was being based on? Because I'm but are there two sets of missions? There's like a normal set and then a narrative set.
Yeah, so one of the narrative missions has the thing, when you place a building right in the middle and it's an objective that you're supposed to control at the end of the game. That's where they've slotted the garrisoning rules in another classic example of how well ordered the book is. Your garrison rules are in as an objective for a random thematic mission towards the end of the book. So you have to I have to drag those out and put them on the website so people knew how they worked. But broadly, that's where they sit in the rule book. But because they're part of a narrative mission, they've got stuff about them being haunted and things like that, which doesn't necessarily work well when, like in this photo, you're capturing the princess's tower. So, yeah.
It could be the initial invasion of the undead.
It could well be.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Yeah. And also leadership debuffs. While I think that affects the game quite a lot in maybe not a fun way, because people don't love their stuff running away instead of getting to make it into the glorious melee.
Exactly.
So good choice there.
So I'll be keeping the garrison rules. I will have a play around with amount of terrain, and obviously now I know that these are things people are thinking about. They're the direct things I can then ask people about next events and say, actually, previous feedback was X. I have made Y changes. What are your Z thoughts now? And see what people think.
Initial thought, and this has only just come to me as I've looked at the two bits of terrain. One of those has woods and one of those doesn't.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see a wood or wood equivalent on every board.
Okay.
Whether it's not, it doesn't even have to be physically a wood, even if it just represents, just on the basis of, for example, wood elves. If I was taking wood elves to an event and some of the tables didn't have woods on, I think I would be sad.
They bring their own, don't they?
They only get one. I think it drastically reduces their ability. Like, I don't know that people necessarily use the spell that you can teleport between woods, but that might be something to play around with in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And to be fair, I didn't have any Wood Elf players at the event, so
because they saw the pack.
No direct. Yeah, they're like, we're not going here. This looks rubbish.
Yeah, where's my woods?
No, we did have one player who was playing as the Green Knight, or had the Green Knight in his army.
No,
And
no, you've said it now. The player was role playing the Green
playing
Knight.
as the Green Knight.
Yeah.
So he just like walked through the wall, and we're like, whoa! And obviously, we're in an old Tudor building that was built 600 years ago, so that sort of thing happens quite regularly at my events. People just appear through walls and stuff moves around without you expecting it. Especially being in there. To be fair, actually, going way off tangent here now, but setting up events in that hall. In the big hall upstairs, I'm setting up 40k GTs. If you're there after dark, all the lights are basically off.
Yeah.
It's one of those buildings that just moves because it's old and made of wood.
Creaks.
It's like it just creaks around, and you're just stood in this massive hall, and you've got corridors coming off, and you suddenly just hear in one corner, and it's like, okay, I'm leaving.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's because obviously, as we all know, ghosts aren't real, but unfortunately, human murderers are. So I think that's a reasonable response, because I have been in that venue, and it is just like is it the city hall?
It's the town hall, yeah.
The town hall, yeah. It's just so Saffron Walden is like is it a historic market town?
It's an old market town, dates back to 1100. Basically, is its first appearance in the Doomsday Book.
So it's the sort of quite nice place that you might go on holiday with your parents if you're from England. So it's pretty fancy. And you get there, and there's a town hall, and you go inside, and you walk up these massive steps with the red carpet, and then you get in there, and there's just loads of tables with Warhammer on, which is quite a weird. It's a little bit jarring. Great though, lovely venue.
Yeah,
good 100%. Toilets.
Yeah, lovely toilet. Yeah, proper like there, because it's a hall that they also use for like comedy gigs and stage shows and stuff. So it has like a proper like venue toilets rather than just like at a scout hut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think. So when we get, so I don't think it will happen next year, but I'd like to get to the point where the GTs are sort of 50-player sized events, because then
do you have space for that?
Yeah, so that hall will fit 50 players in it, because you went to the 40k teams tournament last year.
Yeah, of course. Because in my head, I was like, but there were only like 8 teams there. 8 teams of 5. How many does that add up to?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, once you've got 10 teams of 5, you get 50 players, and that's that hall full. Yeah. But you kind of need to, because it's so expensive, you need to fill that hall to make it worth it. So I won't be in the big hall just yet. I'd like to hopefully get to a point where the community is big enough that we can, on a regular, get 50 players in a hall, playing fun old world games, which would be amazing.
I'm not pushing you to commit to it. I reckon the first event that you run next year as a GT, I reckon we could fill out 50 spaces.
You reckon?
Yeah. I'm not, like I said, I'm not pushing you to commit to it. You're the one with the financial bottom line that's, at risk. I'm just sitting here on screen, like, wouldn't it be great if we had a 50-man GT, 50-person GT? My apologies. That'd be incredible. I'd be a huge fan of that. And I've got no risk associated.
What size is the LGT this year? Because that'll be slightly.
I actually don't know.
No idea how many tickets they've sold.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So interestingly, their old world ticket is only 40 quid, as opposed to the normal 60, or it might even be 70 for LGT for the 40k event.
Yeah, 40k is now 75, I think, for the weekend. So
for LGT specifically, it's always more expensive. I think their normal events are still 60. So I wouldn't be surprised to see old world tickets being 60 as well outside of LGT, because it feels like this is a, first hits free or cheap, and then we'll get you hooked on the scene. But yeah, interesting. We've not really done a very good job of being focused on the Saffron Slam, but we've had a great time talking about stuff. Do you want to quickly run through some games? Maybe did you get to play any games as the spare player?
I did get to play, because obviously some people had dropped out, which meant that the numbers weren't working, which means I got to play a couple of games over the day as well. And actually the top photo here is a photo showing what happens when you charge a Chaos Dragon into a big block of Graveguard. And it turns out, if your Chaos Dragon player can't roll dice, the Graveguard will survive, then kill the dragon, and kill 700 points of dragon or 500 points of dragon in one go. So that was really exciting. And my opponent was very glad that he got paired into the TO, who then wiped the floor with him. This is through no tactical acumen. I'm just saying, this is just vampire counts refusing to die.
What was the score?
He killed some direwolves.
And what was the end score?
What's 2,000 minus 80?
It's a 20-0. That poor sod.
Yeah, to
plays the spare player, gets 20-0'd.
It was Russell. He comes to 40k events as well, and he's genuinely like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And And he genuinely doesn't care. He literally comes for a laugh and has a couple of beers and just goes, "This is great. I'm having the best day." And he plays Chaos Warriors in how they should play in the fluff, I think, which is just charge maniacally forwards and see what happens. So it was very much a case of everything just charged forwards. Some of it got into the direwolves and obviously killed the direwolves, and then was just kind of left right in front of my whole army to then get screamed at, charged dragons, terrorgeists, blood knights all hit it all at the same time, and then obviously his chaos knight on his chaos lord on big dragon charging into the graveguards, then running away unceremoniously and being cut down. Probably wasn't that dragon's finest moment.
Yeah, having a swift stride dragon be caught by undead shambling forwards, that's a pretty feels bad.
Yeah, that's the best Those Graveguard I've ever done. We've had previous conversations, Ed, about how we should equip Graveguard. We tried putting them with like the Banner of the Barrows to make them hit on 3s, but they're just too slow. Giving them great weapons, all that sort of stuff, they're just too slow. Too many of them die to then be able to strike back. So I've gone full defensive this time. They've got the shields up. They have got the 5+ regen and the War Banner for the extra combat res. So now they just do what the skeletons do, but a bit better. They have much more base combat res. They still have their any 6s to wound just go through armor.
Yeah.
So they still have that kind of ability built in, which you don't need the great weapons for.
Yeah, Cleaving Blow obviously only works against infantry and cavalry.
Yeah.
But still nice to have.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. And so that kind of means that they still are able to kill some things. Because you just by the dint of having more attacks left because stuff hasn't died, and you just win the attrition game, or hold stuff in place long enough that things can come around the sides and get stuck in, or you can just scream at whatever's locked in combat with you.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I had some Scream experiences this week at doubles, which we're not going to talk about today. That'll be a separate video. But yeah, perfect. You played another game as well. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yes, I played into a high elf player who had he had Dragon, he had the ethereal unit, or the unit that can get ethereal through the spell of Swordmasters. He had a big unit of Loth and Seaguard, a couple of bolt throwers, and then some archers. And that was a example of a game that was really, really close until it wasn't. Where a bit of early trading, I lost the direwolves far too easily. He got into combat with some stuff. He managed to get two dragons and a unit into the graveguard from 3 different sides and just wiped it completely. And I was like, oh shit, this is going a bit wrong. But that then put all of those units very much out of position. And I was able to get a lot of rear charges and stuff, finished off both dragons with my dragon and the Blood Knights, and some screams. And then the skeletons just refused to die, as they often do, and just wandered up the board. The big ethereal unit, there was the one turn where he failed to get ethereal off that I managed to get my zombie dragon into their rear with the skeletons in front. So I got the static combat res of the skeletons, then the massive damage from the dragon in the rear, which meant that unit then just obviously just crumbled and fell away.
Yeah.
And we found out what happens if you have a block of Loth and Seaguard and a Terrorgeist fighting over the course of a whole game. It was like a whole mini challenge going on one side of the board, where 25 or 20 Seaguard were just shot the Terrorgeist for 2 turns. Terrorgeist charged in. They refused to run away. They don't care about terror. They don't care. They just literally stayed there. They just did not break. So Terrorgeist had to eat every single one of those Seaguard, which he did. Bless them. But yeah, it was literally like, come on. I was like, win these combats by like 5, and he'd be like, double 1. I'm like, come on.
Makes sense. Elves are tenacious.
Yes, they did. They refused to go down, which was quite funny. But yeah, so that unfortunately as well, because I shouldn't be doing this as a TO, but it was another 20-0 in my favour.
That's so unreasonable.
I'm sorry. What I do say, and because when someone gets paired into me, I give them a 17-3 win straight on BCP that goes on, and if they can do better against me, they'll get the better score. So they both players obviously can walk away with the win. But and what I would do at 40k,
Lewis isn't going to say it, but especially in 40k, Lewis is actually quite good. So the funny thing is, he's like, yeah, if someone does better than that, they can have a better score. You're probably not going to get better than a 17-3. Has it ever happened? Has anyone ever beaten you better than 17-3?
No, not yet, but it will. I feel like that's quite generous, is it not?
No, it's super generous. I think it's just really funny that you're like, yeah, if you can do better, I'll give you a better score. And I know from experience that people won't be doing better.
Just got to dangle the carrot head. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, no, it's a super reasonable offer. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just funny knowing that you will absolutely smash people.
But yeah, that's not the intention, I promise.
No.
And what I would normally do at 40k events, where I have to dip into a game if we get an odd number, is I will start the game by saying, do you want just to play a game, or do you want this as kind of like a coaching thing? So I'm one of the coaches for the 6++ 40k guys. I have one coaching client, Lucy. She's brilliant. And so I say to them, do you want a coaching game, or do we just play a game and I'll just play to the level I can play to? And most people turn around and want a coaching game, and we talk through what the options are. Maybe we'll only play 2 turns. They'll take their 17-3 win, or whatever the equivalent is in 40k, and we'll just play a couple of turns and we'll work it out. We'll go through some deployments and options and things like that. But I've not felt yet at the point where I've played enough Old World that I'd be kind of confident / arrogant enough to go up to a person and say, do you want to play me as a proper game, or should we work this out as a coach? Because I just don't know enough of the strategy. I don't know enough of the other armies.
Yeah.
Know what they should be doing. Like, if someone's playing vampire counts, I'll be pretty confident in kind of coaching them through how a kind of reasonable game plan should go. But I wouldn't know the first thing about Bretonnians, for example, or High Elves in this example, and Chaos Knights, Chaos Warriors. So yeah, I potentially, by the time we get to November, I'll have played a load more games and played into more different armies, so would feel potentially more confident doing that, because the intention is not, and luckily both guys I played did enjoy their games, even though it didn't end well for them, especially because I say that High Elf game, it could have gone either way. If they'd managed to get the overruns the distance they wanted when they killed the Graveguard and stuff like that, they'd have been out of charge range, which meant they'd have had a turn to swing the dragons round and not take the damage they took. So it just happened, it didn't quite work out for them.
One of those classics is going to be a one way or the other, and we'll just find out by rolling some dice.
Exactly, yeah, because if the dragon had gone a bit further, they'd have been in behind me, which means they'd have been able to attack the Necromancer or get the Banshee, and then suddenly my army crumbles away, and then I lose the game 20-0 at that point. Just a bloody Terrorgeist in the corner, just munching his way through Seaguard. So it could have gone either way. So that was a really, really good game until I guess it wasn't. So yeah, and then the Chaos one, he ran forwards.
He was winning up until he lost.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I guess I don't know if I have anything more really, Ed. We've been talking for almost an hour, so it feels like a good length. But I don't know if there's any other questions or anything else.
No, that all sounds great. I'm really looking forward to getting to the next event. I think it'll be a lot of fun if we do sit down and maybe work through a terrain pack, even if it only ends up being like a first draft.
Yeah,
something to work through there. Lovely stuff. All right. Thanks for watching. This has been an episode of the Close Order podcast. I've lost count already. Keep an eye out. There is, the scope of the project continuously is
1,000 people have subscribed to hear that, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. The goal is to have a podcast coming out every week, and there is also, and we haven't nailed this down yet, but there is potential for us going to live recording the podcast. So just keep your eye on that one. I think we might be looking at moving podcast release day to Thursdays, but again, you'll find out about that as it happens, not before. I think we might just do it. Yeah. If we do a live one, it'll probably be something like 7:00 on a Thursday, but to be decided. So
yeah, we want to get the live shows to a position where we have enough people watching that interact in a way, because I think that's what makes the shows good, is that people contribute to them as we're recording them. So that's what we want to hear, really. That's what sort of stuff we want. Yeah,
coming from the 40k channel, we've both done, and especially me, I was on like pretty much every episode for about 8 months. Just really enjoy the vibe of the live podcasts. They do tend to run a little bit longer, but it depends how disciplined we can be. People like longer podcasts. It's just also fitting in the rest of your life around it. But, yeah. Thank you for watching. Any last words to end on?
No, come to Saffron Slam in November, team. Get stuck in. We'll want you. It's going to be amazing.
Fantastic. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.